Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studio, it's time for Family Business Radio. Showcasing outstanding family businesses and the advisors who assist them.
Welcome to another wonderful episode of Family Business Radio. I'm your host, Anthony Chen. Today we have two great businesses and guests joining with us today. And for our first guest, we have Lauren Fernandez from the Fernandez Company. Lauren, thank you for coming to the show.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
So kind of share us with a little story as to what got you into creating your company.
It's actually a great story. I'm an attorney by profession. So I spent most of my career here in Atlanta. So I've been in Atlanta for 18 years now. And when I finished Emory Law School and Business School, I came out into a pretty rough economy in 2006. And I was fortunate to work with an intellectual property boutique here in Atlanta called Gardner Groff. And so spent much of my career subsequent as an attorney, not only in a law firm, but also in-house doing intellectual property and a lot of product development and commercialization. Eventually, that path led me to being recruited over to Focus Brands, and so shifted gears into doing product development and licensing for a large restaurant franchisor. At the time, they had over 4,000 franchised and company-owned units and 5 brands under management there. And so it might be my fault if you see like Cinnabon on vodka or Cinnabon on Airwick, et cetera. I spent some really wonderful time at Focus Brands. And when I left the company, started the Fernandez Company to do with all kinds of restaurants and hospitality groups what I had done at Focus Brands, right? Which was establishing additional revenue streams really for established restaurant brands, helping them spin products off that created efficiencies in their manufacturing, but also standardization of some key products, and ultimately created a B2C product that they could take and put out into the marketplace and put to retail for their loyal fans and customers. The Fernandez Company now expands its services. We now offer all kinds of restaurant support and development, from back of house management, accounting, finance, the marketing, the operations, the supply chain pieces, all the way through brand development and growth strategies, and ultimately investment in these smaller restaurant brands. So in a nutshell, what we do now is we help restaurant brands grow from 2 to 20 units. So I spend every day working with family-owned businesses, owners, operators, and I have been one myself too. So in the midst of also operating the Fernandez Company, I was an owner and operator of 11 chicken salad chick restaurants in this Atlanta, Augusta, and Athens markets.
So you mentioned having worked in the field of IP law, and you listed some big names like Cinnabon, and I'm thinking, wow, I don't know how you would be able to convince me to leave a project like that. So what was kind of the impetus that got you going into, you know what, I enjoy this, but I want to do something of my own?
You know, candidly, as an attorney, I always had a very strong business acumen. I was extremely fortunate to work in not one, but 2 corporate environments with bosses I directly reported to bosses who saw me as more than an attorney and allowed me to have an active role in the business and really understand the business. And I think just sometimes those situations change. And so when I left Focus, I really shifted my practice strongly towards the consulting side, to the extent that even I would say to the extent of farming out or sending out or referring out some of the legal work so I could focus with my clients on the consulting piece. And for me, that was a major shift in my career. I was in my mid-30s. It was just time. It was time to hang up predominantly being a lawyer and work more on the business side. So for me, starting my own consulting business allowed me to be in control of exactly how much legal work I took versus consulting work, and allowed me to build out exactly the team that I needed to help me execute these visions for clients. So that was, if that answers the question, I think a real important piece for me was the flexibility to be able to dial up and down exactly what my work mix looked like.
And you mentioned kind of your journey being handed more control of running the business rather than just being a legal or an IT attorney. During that journey, what also prompted you to begin getting more involved, invested as a business operator with restaurants? Because you mentioned you own several chains.
Yeah. So, I think it was extremely important to me because I had been a pharmaceutical in-house lawyer. And so I switched over to restaurants and to franchising. My then boss was extremely flexible and really felt it was important for me to receive brand training. So I had never really worked in a restaurant before outside of the occasional summer job. So I went and got full brand training in all 5 of our brands before I ever even touched a contract at that company. And it was really important that I have some operational knowledge before I sit down in the seat and start making judgments about risk to the company and really how to help best our franchisees and our franchise partners. So that was instilled in me very early, that kind of walking the walk with our franchisee partners was extremely important. And I don't know another way to do it. I still think to this day, that's the best way for me to operate as not only a consultant, but as a leader in this industry, that we always prioritize our franchisees and build systems and methods and procedures that have them in mind. Eventually, it led to me investing and owning restaurants. I felt like that was just an important part of my journey. And I was really blessed. I partnered with a fantastic local partner. We started Origin Development Company, and along with my partners, developed and grew the Chicken Salad Chick brand in this market, Athens and Augusta. And in doing so, I think that was one of the most important educations I've ever had in my life, because you can theoretically and sit in a boardroom and read P&Ls all day long, and you can have this sort of 30,000 foot view in aggregate of what it is to be a franchisor and even understand your franchisees, but you don't really truly understand them until you've been one. And I think that's something that really differentiates me and my consulting group now. Almost every single member of our team, without exception, has either owned or operated a restaurant at some point. So we add that level of really deep understanding of what it is to be an operator when we give consulting advice.
So it's not just preaching, but you actually have practiced and been there. Now, I know a little bit about what it's like and how the difficulties and challenges in opening one business or even one restaurant. Let our audience get a little sneak peek of how many did you open?
We bought 3 restaurants in Kennesaw, Roswell, and Alpharetta, and it took us about 3 months to stabilize those and really kind of get a handle on the ropes and what we needed to do. And within the next 3 years, we opened a total of 8 restaurants that were traditional brick and mortar, in addition to 3 locations inside of America's Mart. And when we sold the business in December 2018, we had 3 locations under development. So I was incredibly fortunate to have a top-notch team, both at the franchisor and at Origin Development Group, helping me make that happen, because you have to be extremely organized, be extremely efficient with resources, and all of that while juggling the flaming chainsaws that is daily operations of restaurants. And so to this day, that family, that group that helped us make that happen will be, always in our hearts. It was I'm not a one woman show. I mean, it took a village to make that happen. And, even to the extent I joke about this, but it's dead serious. My husband, not an employee of the company, had a name tag from day one, because when we needed help, that's who you call. It's a family business, right? Our daughter was there kind of helping wash windows if she wanted to earn a few extra dollars. I mean, it's really something that does take a village. And so I don't want to take any credit for that. It was a lot of people who helped me.
So you really put the family in family businesses. So kind of going on that topic, what do you think is the most important thing when working with family-owned businesses?
So I think really having a ton of empathy and understanding of what those dynamics do to families and what kind of extra stress goes home with you at night when you can't leave it at the business. And so having owned and operated several businesses over my life, which, when you're independently owned and operated, it is a family business. In my mind, there's no way to separate your involvement in something that takes that much time and effort and love and attention from the people who are in your daily life. And that's what families do. They support, right? So I think from my perspective, having that deeper understanding of, deadlines don't have the same meaning. If they have life event going on, you have to pause for that and just be respectful of the fact that they are at a different pace. They have a lot to juggle. And so it's a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding, and a lot of patience. And, truthfully, sometimes it just means we step up even a little bit more because we have that empathy for our clients, because we have walked the walk and we understand what it is, especially to be a restaurant owner.
Mm-hmm. Now, with family businesses, there's a common struggle in how they can find ways to grow and kind of scale the business. What are some ways that you can bring in, or service that you bring in to help them scale up?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question. So when we're talking about scaled growth within family businesses, it's always about an end goal. First conversation we have with our clients is, what are we aiming for? What's the next 5 years look like? What's the next 10 years look like? And a necessary part of that discussion is succession planning, because even if you have a growth plan that you're trying to execute over the next 3, 5, 10 years, that means generationally, everyone has to be in the boat and in agreement and kind of rowing in the same direction. So having that big discussion about why, what do we want to grow? How are we going to grow it? And coming up ultimately with a growth plan necessarily includes, in a family-owned business, some discussion around who's going to be on the payroll, who has what roles, what's the transition plan going to look like? What's the exit going to look like for certain members of the family if we need to pull that trigger? So it's a little bit more, I don't want to say extra work, but a little bit more mindful in the discussion that we're having. And we try to involve all of the relevant parties in a family-owned business when we're doing these growth plans. I think that that's a very important first step. Now, to further answer your question, if I may, for restaurants, when we're looking at growth, the formula that we use is an equal mix, or some sort of mix custom to the restaurant, of licensed product and commercial product development. We use the traditional brick and mortar restaurant growth, right? Just building more restaurants, getting more seats available for the consuming public. We look at airport and other non-traditional growth options for our clients. And then we also look at franchising, possibly a little bit more down the road, to get more sales in the door, but also to expose the brand to more people and have partners in that growth journey. So all of this said, what's most important is that everybody's in the boat together and that we're rowing in the same direction. That includes all the members that are relevant of the family-owned business.
So much like you read my mind in terms of my next question. It was going to be more specific towards restaurants or own restaurants. What is kind of the top 3 things you look for, or things that they should be aware about as they're expanding or looking to expand?
That's a great question. And often these are things, I'm going to make some recommendations. These are things that they can even do before they engage us as consultants, but it's often the things that we address even in the early stages of our relationship when we're working with a family-owned business. The first and most important thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is clean the books. When you are a family-owned business, your objective is to minimize your tax base, right? So there's a lot of things that are run through that business and a lot of things done to mitigate a profit margin. And so when you're looking to grow, that profit margin actually needs to look as robust as possible. So it means removing extraneous items from payroll, removing expenses from the business that maybe are not absolutely necessary to the business. They're, from a tax nexus, they're legitimate. However, on your P&L, what we're looking for is to have really good labor metrics that are accurate to people who are actually performing duties in the restaurant. We're looking for minimized food costs so that you're not stuffing weird charges into the restaurant that don't belong there. And we're looking for really tight profit margins that are showing consistent profit margin over time. So that's kind of the number one thing, is clean those books and clean them with the mind that someone who's going to be investing in your business, or who may want to buy the rights to copy, paste, and repeat your business, wants to make sure that there's a legitimate profit margin, and that's what they're going to need to see. The second thing is document. I cannot stress this enough either. There's a lot of stuff that's in the head of an owner operator or in the general knowledge of the family, like the secret recipes, etc. But writing those recipes down, writing down and organizing yourself around process and procedure is a lot of work. And that's something that really needs to be done by the people who know. And while we have templates and guides and helpful ways of structuring that kind of process, ultimately it's a data dump from brain to paper. And so that's a process that could take a lot of time as well. I think the third thing that's also very important for most people to understand is distinguish and clarify the brand, and it has to exist that's in a way that's bigger than the person who founded it, started it, and is running it. So what I mean by that is you can still be the mayor of your restaurant, you can be the head of the family, head of the business, but we need to be building something that's marketable, repeatable, and that's communicable to the consuming public without it being a cult of personality around one person. So it's really about kind of, again, defining what that brand looks like and making sure that it's not too tied to kind of the comfort of it being run by a familiar family kind of enterprise, if that makes sense.
So how would a business owner or a restaurant owner know that, all right, I'm kind of hitting a wall? What would be signs that they should be looking for to seek someone like you for help?
Yeah, so a lot of times people will get to one restaurant and sometimes even two and see successful profits, but they're seeing them as cash in the door instead of as a percent margin. So that's one reason that a lot of people come to us is they create instant efficiencies when they're working with us. We can go in and spot how to tune up and fine tune the business so that it's running more efficiently and therefore generating better profit margins for them. So that's kind of one thing. You see people come to us when they're stagnant in their margin and they're not really understanding how to get more margin out of the business. I would say that that's number one. Number two is I would just call it it's the scalability issue, right? Like you're one person, you're stretched between 2 or 3 units, it's exhausting, and you kind of have this epiphany where you go, I can't clone myself. How am I going to grow this thing beyond me trying to juggle all of these different things? And so that's another reason that people come to us ultimately, because they realize they can't do it all themselves. And so a big part of our consulting process is educating, coaching, and mentoring those family-owned businesses or that owner operator on what is the highest and best use of their time. What are the things that are good to outsource? What are the things that they can control? What are the things to let go of? And so that's kind of a big turning point for a lot of our clients. I would say that that's probably about 80% of the time what it is.
Mm-hmm. So now for our listeners who might be themselves in the position or know someone that's in the position, how can they best find you?
No, absolutely. The best way to find us is at the FernandezCompany.com. We are locally based in Atlanta, Georgia, but serve clients coast to coast. So you can find us on our website. And once you're on our website, we have links to all of our social media, including LinkedIn. And you can find me on LinkedIn as Lauren Fernandez of the Fernandez Company.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Lauren.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And for our next great guest, we have Tom Burgess with Christian Brothers Automotive. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So kind of share us with your story of how you got into your business.
So I've been a motorhead all my life. I had fixed up my first car before I got my license, had it painted and mechanically updated and on. And I've done motorcycles and boats and cars and classics and you name it. But I was Air Force for 23 years and I moved 9 times. And every time I moved, I had to find a mechanic. And knowing a little bit about cars, I knew when I was being taken advantage of. And when I found a shop that I felt very comfortable with, I was very loyal to them. So I left the Air Force, started working for a defense contractor, and was traveling all the time. 2 weeks out of every month I was on the road, and I needed to find something where I felt a little more stay at home. I wanted to open my own business, but I didn't know what to do. And I just happened to see a little tiny blurb in my Veterans magazine about Christian Brothers Automotive and started looking into it. My wife said, absolutely not. You're not leaving the corporate world to open some auto shop. It'll never happen. And after quite a bit of slowly bringing her along, she agreed. Once we visited some shops and she started talking to them, it was clear it was not, as she put, a greasy, grimy automotive shop that she wanted nothing to do with. So that's how it all started, was just a tiny little ad that happened to be at the bottom of USA magazine.
Mm-hmm. So what attracted you to Christian Brothers Automotive? Because other than just the ad, you mentioned you visited a couple of franchises, and it sounded like it broke the stereotype for her, what she was expecting.
Yeah, that's really what it was. It's just as I started to do my research, I started to see what they talked about was honesty. Their theme was love your neighbor as yourself. And that was very attractive to me. That's, if I was going to open an auto shop, that's what I would want to be. It's faith-based. I really like that aspect of it. It's not just a name, Christian Brothers. It's very much a faith-based organization. And then key was they had never closed one in 35 years, which in the automotive industry is really rare. You normally have some shops that just won't succeed. And the fact that they had never had one was very obviously a family, wife and 3 kids at the time. I wanted something that I had some security with. So that was very attractive to me as well.
So as you were starting, what are some of the kind of the early challenges leaving the corporate world now into your own business?
Yeah, it was, they were huge. The franchise was awesome in getting me set up. They were incredible. They told me down to how many boxes of paper clips to buy. I mean, they really handled the whole aspect of opening very well. And so they helped me with recruiting. We had a great team as far as I knew, and we threw open the doors and no cars drove in because they had told me, don't do any advanced marketing like a grand opening, because if you don't open on time for whatever reason, you'll just upset people. So I've got, 3 mechanics, a service manager, myself, and we have no cars. And this is a very, very, very intense industry right around me. I've got, I think, 70 bays within a 3-mile area. So a lot of competition here. So immediately I didn't have any ads coming out for 30 days. So I just started running around trying to get into all the local businesses and get the name out there. So that was probably the first thing. Marketing was probably the first big challenge. And then the second was time, because I was at the counter all day and the bills are piling up and the emails are piling up. So I was at the counter all day waiting on customers, and then at my desk all night trying to beat those things down. So the first year was absolutely exhausting. My family didn't see me, which is why I opened up a business, right, to have family time. And my daughter for Christmas that year gave me a card that said, all I want for Christmas is for Daddy to close the shop. I was like, oh my gosh, just stabbed me in the heart.
Oh, that's rough. That's
horrible. So that was a wonderful year, but it got better after that.
Mm-hmm. So, as you mentioned, you pointed out there's so many bays and competitors in your local area. What did you attribute to your success?
I was just amazingly blessed. My first service manager, unfortunately, had a lot of personal issues that hit him right as we opened. And I had to find another service manager, and the phone rings. It was like the heavens opened up, because the phone rings and it's a guy who's been working for Christian Brothers for 15 years. And he's moving back to Georgia and wanted to know if I needed to hire a service manager. Wow. It was like the day after I decided I've got to get a new service manager. So that was amazing. And when he came on board, he brought one of the best mechanics in Georgia, who had also been working for Christian Brothers for 17 years, who wanted to come and work for Ron again and happened to live fairly close. So I just got the right people on the bus, and that's been the story all along. Lauren talked about that, is you gotta have the right people. And then networking. I went out and joined the VFW. I joined Rotary. I became a member of the North Fulton Chamber, the Cumming Chamber. If there was an organization out there that was networking, I was going to be part of it to get my face out there. So that was another big part, is getting my name out there.
So kind of going into specifically the industry of auto shops. I mean, as you kind of mentioned before, there's let's say not so nice mechanics out there. What do you think causes such a negative stigma in people's minds, their experience with mechanics?
I think the biggest problem, and what I hear from guys that come in to interview and gals, I'll say, well, why do you want to leave that shop or that dealership? And they say, because I can't continue to go to church every Sunday having to repent. And it's due to commissions, I think. I think as soon as you have a product that's so complex that you can just tell people this is the problem and this is what you need, unfortunately, you can take advantage of people. And that's the biggest thing that we see here is Folks will come in that are service writers somewhere else and say, we're selling what we don't need to sell. Mechanics come to me and say, all we do is replace everything. If there's an AC problem, we replace everything. That way we know it won't come back. We know that it's all brand new, but the customer may not have needed all that. And there's a little bit more of a risk the way we do it. We try to replace a component. If all you need is a condenser, we're going to replace that condenser. Now, it may be that the compressor breaks next week, and then you say, well, wait a minute, I just fixed my AC. Well, we fixed one component. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that when you have something as complex as a modern day car, it's like if someone's fixing my computer and they tell me I need a hard drive, I can't argue with them. I say, okay, put in a new hard drive, I guess. But I think that's what's hurt the industry so much. It's just too much of an incentive when you can raise your paycheck by selling more than what the customer may actually need.
What would you consider to be some of the major challenges facing your industry right now?
The lack of technicians. So I think for a period of time, we did not push some of the technical colleges and things. It was everybody needs to go to a regular 4-year college. So there's a big void right now of master technicians out there. Very, very hard to find. So that's number one. They're getting older and they're retiring. I'm very fortunate. I have 4 master techs here. And then really a modern day auto technician is a computer technician, because cars are rolling multiple computers now. Every car has so many of them. And that's a lot of the diagnosing is getting into the computer system to figure out what sensors are not talking correctly. So the biggest challenge down the road I see is the auto manufacturers are trying to retain control of that data, that they don't want to release it to an independent shop. They want to say that's Ford's data because it's in Ford's computer in the car. And of course, the advocates against that no, the prices are going to skyrocket if the only one that can get that data is the dealership. They're saying that no, the consumer bought that car, therefore the data is part of what the consumer purchased. And what really gets fun is modern day cars are now transmitting data live, real time, back to Ford and telling them, okay, this car is doing A, B, C. It may be a maintenance issue. Now, who owns that data? Do you want that data to be sold? Because it also tells where you are, where you've traveled, how fast you've been driving. Do you want the police to know how quick you've been driving down 400? So there's a huge fight going on about now this data that's being transmitted off board and who has rights to that data. Can Ford sell that data to a marketing company? Because now they know where you travel and what stores you go near and go in and park at. And all cars, I think they said by 2023 are going to have this capability where it's all being sent into the Ethernet or the cloud, whatever. So we've got to make sure that data continues to be released to independent shops like mine. Otherwise, we'll be changing oil and tires, and that's it down the road.
Oh, okay. Well, you mentioned about master technicians, and for us lay people who are not in the mechanical and automotive world, can you share with us like what is that equivalent of to something that we can relate to, or like how hard is it, or the time commitment to become a master tech?
Yeah. So you'll see this little ASE sticker when you go to a shop. It says, we have ASE certified technicians, and it looks really great. But that doesn't mean a whole lot, because if one technician takes one of, I think there's 12 ASEs now, takes one of 12, you can now call yourself an ASE certified shop. But that could be as simple as brakes. That technician's qualified to work on brakes on any car. When you achieve all of them, you're a master technician. That means you're capable of working on and certified to work on any system on any car by any manufacturer. And that's a pretty significant thing. That's like getting your master's degree. It's not an easy process, and you have to stay certified. You have to retest every so many years. If you reach master technician, you can then test for what's called level 1 above that. And that's, again, very few. I have 3 techs that are L1 certified. Then you can get some specialty ones. L2 is diesel certified. I have one of those. But so there's a lot to that most people don't know. They just see an ASE certification. They say, okay, it's a certified shop. But you have to dig a little deeper to find out just how what kind of qualifications they really have, who's working on your car.
And you mentioned a lot of these technicians nowadays are more like programmers. Can you give us a little behind the scenes look? How does that work? Because for the layperson, we think of programmer as someone who's kind of just sitting in an office with AC pumping and code in front of the monitor. Well, what does coding look like in a mechanic shop?
So number one, you have to have a scan tool that can get into that car's system. A lot of shops will have a generic scan tool made by Snap-on, a company like that. And now that's a company that's trying to stay up with all the software for every brand of car that's out there. One of the things that impressed me about Christian Brothers is when you open the shop, you get a DuraBook that has all the factory software in it. So the troubleshooting trees that a technician is using to fix that car, he plugs into the car, he sees what codes come up, which kind of says my shoulder hurts if you were a doctor. Now he starts going in depth into the car to find out, start to scan and probe different sensors to see if they're reading correctly. When he sends a signal to them, do they answer back the correct way? So we have all the factory scan tools in one big DuraBook computer that these guys can use. And that's what they're doing. They're triggering something and they're watching on the high bus as it goes from point to point. Is when I hit this button to open the window, does the signal get to the computer that says the owner wants to open the window? The computer sees that signal and sends another signal back to the switch that says, I got that. I'm now going to allow that window open, and sends a signal to the motor. It's not like the old days where 12 volts went from the switch to the motor. So the technician with the right tool can hit that button and actually watch that circuit complete via X's and O's to say, okay, I've now troubleshooted and eliminated all those different things that I know that's all working correctly. It has to now be the motor because the signal's coming back to the motor. If you don't have that, you're kind of guessing. There's no probing with a 12-volt probe to figure out whether something's happening because it's all being done with code now that comes down. I mean, you have little chips in your door panel on your armrest that's talking about whether you can roll the windows up because 30 seconds has or has not gone by since you shut the key off. I mean, cars are incredibly complex nowadays. Whenever you touch something, all you're doing in your car is saying, hey, computer, I want to do this. And it's up to whether the computer is going to let you do that or not. So, that's what they're doing. They're doing a lot of troubleshooting via computer diagnostics.
It's like we take a lot of things for granted, not even thinking with every switch and little button, there's a computer right behind it.
Yep. And many, I think a new Mercedes will have 30 computers, 25 to 30 computers in it. It's not like you have one central computer like you used to now. They're all over the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. So going into the franchise, what is it like to be running with a faith-based company?
It's interesting because people kind of wonder about that when you're hiring, how do you do that? And, we just tell people, hey, we are a faith-based industry. And in the end, that whatever that means to you, if you're agnostic, we're okay with that. But just know that, when we sit down together, we're going to say a blessing ahead of time. So we're not out there. We're not, trying to convert anybody to anything. But on the other hand, it is what it is. I thank God every day for all the blessings that I have here in the shop and the folks that I have here. And that's what it comes down to. When they select franchisees, that's something that they look very hard at.
Well, especially with the story that I didn't even know about with your, project manager, I think, was it where one day later a call in and then the mechanic comes right in? I mean, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is.
Well, I'll give you a better one. We were going to open across the street from where we are right now, and they were going to tear up the road about a month after our opening, and the property fell through last second. I had a house purchased up here. My house was sold down in Warner Robins. So we thought, oh, this is horrible. Well, as it turned out, Bethelview, anybody who lives up here knows this was a nightmare construction project, and nobody came down this road, and it took years to finish the road. So when it was done is when we opened across the street from where we were going to, and I am convinced we would have gone bankrupt. I would have never gotten business in to pay the bills if we had opened just before they ripped up the road. So again, thank you.
Sounds like there's a lot of oddly coincidental, or what do you call it, providence. That happened.
There you go.
So, well, you mentioned a little bit as you were kind of growing up, tinkering with cars and motorcycles. What is your prized project or possession that you have right now?
Well, I'm a motorhead, as I said. So loud cars, loud boats, high horsepower engines. So I just purchased a cigarette boat that's got twin 720 horsepower supercharged motors in it. So That's my new toy. Yeah.
So is there a prized possession out there that you have an eye on that you really want to, as part of your collection?
No, I just bought it. I had to sell my GT500 to buy that. I had to trade one toy for another. My wife would have shot me.
Couldn't convince her, because you convinced her with the Christian Brothers Automotive.
I'm still working on convincing her on this boat. She's not on board yet. Trust me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your amazing story. What's the best way for someone to find your shop?
Obviously, just go on the internet, Christian Brothers Automotive in Cumming. We're right off of exit 13, about a quarter mile away from the exit off of 400. But yeah, you can just go on the internet, do a search, and get all our info.
Well, thank you for sharing, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
So this being a November episode, and based on some of the answers and everyone talking a lot about family and signs, whether from Providence or what have you, all coming in to shape one's choices in their life and business. Some of the questions I want to bring both of our guests back to kind of pipe in with their wisdom for our listeners, Lauren and Tom. For those who are kind of on the cusp of, you know what, I want to try out for myself and leave this corporate job I'm at, but I'm scared because, as you both kind of shared with us your struggles and kind of that uncertainty, what is the top 2 or 3 words of wisdom or advice that you would give someone that's kind of on the fence right now and just scared of taking that first leap?
That's a good question. I'll go. Can I go first? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay, so I things I almost wish I had known when I kind of made the leap. Number 1, get a financial planner, because, and I'm not just saying this because you're hosting and you're a financial planner, but it is absolutely critical that you understand what your minimum revenue or run rate is a month. So you understand kind of what it costs for you to live at a kind of very bare bones, no gym membership, no eating out kind of lifestyle to make it happen, versus what you might just be accustomed to. And I don't think a lot of people really even know what that number is. So when I am working with independent clients, especially if they are a single owner operator and the whole business revolves around them, that's one of the things we actually work with is like, hey, what is your personal run rate? Never mind the restaurant. What's yours? So that we're making sure that we cover that easily every single year. I think that's the number 1 piece of advice. The second piece of advice I would give is, it is more work, right? It's never easier to do it yourself, to do it on your own, or to run it as a family business. But I think it's a calling for a lot of people that it has a trade-off, which there's more work, but there's more reward, right? There's more personal satisfaction. There's more freedom. There's more flexibility. And I do think that that's kind of both sides of the same coin. So on those days that you feel like you're just getting kicked while you're down and there's really no one standing next to you because it's you, yourself, and maybe your family's behind you even, but it's still hard. Create a network. I think understanding and meeting up with other people who are like-minded, even if they're not in your industry, and phone a friend, like call someone and just say, oh my God, I just had the worst day, and trust those people to hear you, to understand your humility and that moment of confession where you're just like, I just need help today. I just need to take my mind off of it. I need someone else to help me think about this problem, and use those people because they are your family of choice, right? They're the family that you choose, and they're the family who are going to help you and always be there when they, they're the folks that they're the top 5 numbers in your phone, right? The folks that you call for random advice on things. And we lovingly call that our lifeboat. In my business, we say, who's in your lifeboat? And it may be friends and it may be some extended family, but, know who those people are and use them, I think would be my second big piece of advice.
Thank you. And Tom?
Boy, there's a whole bunch. I would say my one big mistake I made was when I called owners up that own franchises. And I said, well, what's your hour? Or how many hours you work a day? And they said, 6:30 to 6:30. I said, oh, that's not bad. I can do that easy. But I forgot to ask all 3 of them, does your wife work in the business? And all 3 of them, their wives worked 8 to 5 handling paperwork. So that was a huge error on my part because my wife was like, I'm raising 3 kids. If you do this, this is yours. So I would have certainly hired someone to help. I've got Steve behind me right here who's doing a lot of the books and paperwork and all that stuff right now for me. I would have hired somebody a lot earlier to help with that because it was mind blowing. And then the second thing, I'll make a pitch for franchises. I could have never opened Tom's Automotive Shop. They helped with recruiting. There's so many contracts. There's so many vendors you work with, suppliers. I would have never, ever been able to wade through all that while trying to start a business at the same time in recruiting. So I have to say that it was really a wise decision to go with an established franchise. And still now we're always cutting edge with everything that we're doing because I've got a home office looking into what is the latest and greatest for marketing, for point of sales, everything. So those would probably be the two big things for me is really understand what you're getting into, talk to owners, and then if you think you're going to go do it on your own, depending upon what the business is and where your field of expertise is, be careful there. Because like I said, I'm very passionate about cars and all that kind of stuff, but I could have never opened up a shop on my own, I don't believe.
So kind of on topic with family businesses and persuading either a spouse or everyone to kind of be on board. What is your advice for those who are kind of just already had their foot in it and they're really struggling balancing both the family time and the business time? How did you navigate and compromise in finding a balance with that?
That's never ending for me because I could spend 24 hours a day here, and I do we may go on vacation, but I've always got my laptop and I'm up at, still up at 5 a.m, and I'm trying to knock out everything that I can, or I'll be overwhelmed when I get back. So there was no work-life balance my first year. It was work, period. And my family time absolutely suffered. So I'm not sure what I would say. I mean, if you own your own business, it doesn't end. Now, having said that, I can take vacations when I want to take vacations now, which is dynamite. And I have the flexibility to leave and go to one of my kids' performances or whatever. And so Lauren touched on that there's a lot of benefits. Once you're up and running and you're established and all, there is a lot of flexibility. But on the other hand, it never goes away.
And Lauren?
Yeah, I will briefly add to that, Anthony, is I think when you own your own business, it's a 24/7, 365 job because there's no one else to pick it up. And so I think you have to have the humility and the grace and the willingness to be honest with the people in your family when you need help, when you're overwhelmed. You have to communicate those things because when you don't, I think, you're coming home from a long day at work and they have no idea sometimes what's been going on. And so they just read your attitude when you come in the door, and that's hard for them to sometimes not know. So I think kind of having that willingness to openly communicate and to ask for help when you need it. Some of the best advice I got from my husband when we were building Origin Development Group and building all those restaurants was, why are you doing this? And it was just a question he would ask me sometimes. And it wasn't to be mean. It was kind of more like the intention was, is this really the highest and best use of your time? Why haven't you trained someone else on your team to do this? Why isn't there a vendor doing this for you? You're not a marketing expert. Why are you doing, why are you designing an ad at 2 a.m. for your grand opening? And I say this humbly because he was right. And I think now the difference is I'm constantly asking that question because if I don't, if I can find someone else to do it, I will hand it off and build those processes and procedures because that's the only way that I will have any free time as we scale and grow our own business to spend with my family. And so I have to prioritize that as an agenda item. Can I shovel past this off on someone else? Can I train someone else? Can I have a vendor do this and pay them for their time? I think that's the best way I can answer that question because otherwise, he's right. You're going to end up in the business all the time.
Well, thank you both for coming on the show and sharing your words of wisdom and your origin stories.
Thanks for having me.
So this show is sponsored and brought to you by yours truly, Anthony Chen, with Lighthouse Financial Network, securities and advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates, Inc., or RAA, is member FINRA SIPC. RAA is separately owned and other entities or marketing names products or services referenced here are independent of RAA. Our main office address is at 575 Broad Hollow Road in Melville, New York, 11747. You can best reach me at my email at Anthony Chen, CHEN, at lfnllc.com, or by phone 631-465-9090. And my extension is 5075. Until next time, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everyone.